Runway, such an emotional episode. You know, it's so different watching this show when you actually know these queens. Oh, hey, hi, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo with the Fingerdoo Review of Canada's Drag Race, Season 1, Episode 4. And before I get started, I just want to send out a shout to my tipperdoos, but before I hit my tipperdoos, I actually just want to say that, I have my Patreon supporters. You can read their names at the end of my reviews. And the other day, Rand Searcy of Mr. and Mr. R.D. Searcy on my credit roll contacted me to say that their granddaughter, look who's got a granddaughter, wanted to support the channel. So what they thought they would do is edit their Patreon support and then change their credit from Mr. and Mr. R.D. Searcy to the Searcy family. And so I've done that. So I just wanted to say welcome to granddaughter Searcy. Welcome, my darling, to the Fingerdoo family. And thank you so much for wanting to be a part of it. I'm so serious. Now, I want to move on, of course, to my tipperdoos. And this week, we have Greg Caravo, also Charlie Green from Baltimore. Cooey Charlie, Rudy Giachetti, Moonshine Shorey. Now, I have no idea if that's a company or a person. I'm going to say, Moonshine, that you're a person. And because of that, I think you and I could be friends. I'm just saying. Also, thanks to Vita Bacuzzi. How are you, doll? John Dwyer, you big old flirt, John. Seriously. Samuel Belcher, thank you. Emily Barriso. Emily, this week I dropped the R, to be less formal. Just thought I'd let you know. Thanks also to Joe Van Patten, Glenn Gore, and Catherine Turner. But of course, Catherine, I'm so sorry, but when I saw it at first, I thought I said Kathleen Turner, and I had a little bit of a heart attack. Not that I'm not thrilled for your tip, but just for half a second there, I was spelling Kathleen Turner with a C. Seriously. And Agnes Davis, Daniel Lambden, and Randall Robbins, thank you all so much for taking the time to tip me and support my channel. I totally appreciate it, especially in these times that we're living in. And if you are interested in supporting the channel or just giving me a tip, you know what I'm saying, all the links are down below in my description box under this video. Now comes my favorite part. It's on to the Redbubble models. Now, the first Redbubble model is the best son in the world because he's being raised by the best mother in the world. Miranda Kirkness's own son, Zachary. He finally got his button. I'm so thrilled. And he looks fantastic wearing it. I'm so serious. Cooey, Zachary. I hope you're having a great week. And it took me a minute. This is the one and only Darby Lynn Cartwright from IMHO. How cute is she, first of all, out of drag? She's cute in drag. But I had no idea she's that. And second of all, she looks like she lives in a good apartment. I'm just so serious. But she got, of course, her t-shirt, and she looks fantastic wearing it as well. I just want to thank both her and Zachary for visiting Redbubble and supporting me and showing people that you care how you look by wearing the best. Or at least, in my opinion. And I just want to again say thanks so much to Larja Souza for the fantastic artwork that's being sold on Redbubble right now. I will have something new coming up. I've teased it, but I'm just working out the details, but we have something else coming up. But that's neither here nor there. It's on to Canada's Drag Race. So, Jorge, drink me! What is that sound? Did you just pop open a beer? Wait, this is today's, oh, look at this. Oh, all right, okay. Well, for those of you who are a longtime fan of the Fingerdoo Review, you'll recognize this as the depth charge. And if you're not, then you probably call it a Boilermaker, and such is life. But either way, here's how we drink them. It's a beer and a shot. You don't need to drink it this way. You can have mix and a shot of your favorite booze. You can do soda and gin, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. But the traditional way to drink this is a beer and a shot, and this is how we do it. 1, 2, 3, depth charge. Ooh, splashy. Ooh. And whiskey. Okay, so let's get to it. We started this week off with the queens returning to the workroom, only to find that Anastasia and Runway had not left a lipstick message, and the queens were shook. Well, some of them were. Tainomi seemed to downplay the whole thing by saying that Anastasia had said what she needed to say on stage. But personally, I think she was gooped. Gooped enough to use the C word. I'm so serious that I'm not talking Christmas. So as the queens took a breather, it seemed that whatever manufactured problems Scarlet Bobo was having with Boa seemed to magically be resolved. Well, at least for the moment anyway. My prediction is that if Bobo finds herself at the bottom again, well, look how Boa is, all I'm saying. Rita, bless her, was over the Toronto queens, as well she should be. She was saying that they were loud and obnoxious and quick to insult each other. Hello? They live in Toronto. The whole city's like that. I'm so serious. Anyway, with a flip of her wig and a hearty, this isn't Toronto's drag race, Rita was off to de-drag, and the other queens quickly followed suit. While Priyanka was de-dragging, she was secretly agreeing with Rita that the Toronto queens are all full of themselves, and, well, they better check themselves before they wreck themselves, because so far as Canada's drag race is concerned, they're dropping like flies. Seriously. The next day in the workroom, Tainomi Banks spilled her own tea with the queens about how being in the bottom for a second time in a row was causing her to have wet pillows, which I know sounds dirty, but was actually my drag queen name in high school. What were we talking about? Oh yes, Ty's tears of shame and disappointment. Well, she couldn't have been too down because it didn't stop her from showing a little defiant bravado against Brooklyn Heights' warning that she better bring it. Of course, she could have just been showing off for the other queens. Either way, it was the loudest outburst she's had all season. Thank God Rue's video message interrupted the girls. She was going on about treasure and trash and queens serving looks, and then she said Regina, which I'm almost certain Rue knows is a province in Canada. So, while the queens were giggling over Rue saying Regina, the Gautier muse herself, Stacey McKenzie, showed up with this week's mini challenge. And it was a doozy. In fact, it was 10 doozies. 10 sexy, hairy, tight. Well, except for number 2, but I want him. I like a little something extra to hold on to because sometimes I fall off. And besides, that then leaves one pit crew member for each of the queens. And by the looks of Priyanka, if she didn't get her puffer, she was going to pass out. By the way, number 4 was her puffer. And what was this perky peck parade all in aid of, you ask? Well, the queens had to match the pit crew's underwear by getting them to drop their shorts so they could see what was going on down there. And nobody had a problem with that. Lemon was so impressed by the pit crew's efforts that she declared they were doing God's work. Personally, I think they were showing off God's work. I was okay with that. Scarlet Bobo gave it a good old college try, but she was really no use to anyone once Stacey McKenzie got her thinking about baked potatoes. Well, now I'm thinking about them. Priyanka was a bossy queen, but that could have been paid back to all those hot boys blocking her on Grindr. Personally, I just think she was being impatient. Wishing she was wearing eyebrows was the least of Boa's problems. The biggest one was her memory. But was she forgetting or was she being distracted? You say potato, I say pit crew member number 7. And number 1, we'll have the full set. Ilona Verily seemed to make a match right off the top, but unfortunately for Rita Baga, she was having more trouble pairing up the boys. Not that she was complaining. Kiara seemed to make a few matches, and so did Tainomi, but the queen who seemed to be the less distracted by what was hanging around was Jimbo. And as happy as he was to win, he seemed to be a little too happy, at least as far as some of the other queens were concerned. Bragging. I think that's what they call it. And then it was time for Stacey to announce this week's Maxi challenge. Unfortunately For some of the queens, it was a design challenge, but this one had an environmental message. The queens had to reduce, reuse, and refabulatize trash into couture, and they weren't just responsible for their own look, they had to work in teams of 3 to create a 3-look collection. Seriously. The queens quickly divided themselves up into 3 teams, and because Jimbo had won the mini challenge, she got to pick which materials each team got to use. Because her mama didn't raise the fool, Jimbo picked paper for her team. Lemon, Priyanka, and Boa got metal for theirs, which left plastic for Scarlett, Rita, and Kiara. And this just seemed to piss Scarlett off. She wanted paper so bad she'd already started designing couture in the theater of her mind. Well, the good news is they probably weren't complicated designs. So that the queens wouldn't feel completely out of their element, Stacey announced that she would be giving them all one-on-one runway tips. Private coaching from Canada's runway queen? Priceless! Before she left, Stacey also let the queens know that this week's guest host was none other than the winner of Season 1 of Canada's Project Runway, international fashion designer Bedell, who knows a thing or two about fashion competitions. Seriously. They must have been thinking that too, because right away the queens got down to work, and Scarlett Bobo said something that I'm sure more than a couple of the queens were feeling, which was they spent all this money on fashion before they even stepped foot into the workroom of RuPaul's Drag Race. And in some cases, queens are known to take out loans to have the wardrobe to compete on RuPaul's Drag Race. And to all of a sudden do a design challenge with garbage, you could go home on that and owe all that money. Oh, well, as you can imagine, these queens were feeling it. Team Prilamoa were making lemonade out of, well, scrap metal, and, well, at least Lemon was, on paper anyway. It's a good drawer. Team Rikiabo were pooling their resources, which seemed to be Rita's experience as a club kid and Boa and Kiara's skills with a glue gun. Stick 'em up. Get it? Stick. Team Jatilo assessed their recycling bin and their skills. Ilona admitted that she used to make all her own costumes, but now she just pays others to do it. And Jimbo told them that she's a theater designer, which means not only can she make stuff, she can do it quick and cheap. Quick and Cheap was my drag queen name in high school. Ilona and Tainomi came up with a theme for their team, which was Sherbert Showgirls, and Jimbo seemed to be on board with it. So, Tainomi and Ilona did the only thing that was left for them to do, which was judge everyone else's progress. I'm so serious. Never bodes well. Somebody who was in trouble as far as Tainomi and Ilona was concerned was Scarlett Bobo. And she was. Not only was she struggling to make an outfit, but the idea of going from the top to the bottom in 1 week was freaking her out. At least she was able to clap back when the recent bottom queens judged her couture. Ilona and Tainomi, I'm looking at you. In the Karma is a Bitch category, Ty and Ilona noticed that Jimbo didn't seem to be as on board with their Sherbert Showgirls theme as he had led them to believe. He had designed some pink and yellow cloud with the word Recycling Queen under it, and it quickly became apparent to Ty and Ilona that they would be ditching their showgirls for royalty, and they were so happy about it. And then it was time to strut it out with runway goddess Stacey McKenzie. First, Team Giddilo, who felt that calling themselves Maison Papier was better. And before I go on, can I just ask, was Jimbo's fly down the whole time? I mean, that could explain what that whole wipe your feet before you enter statement was all about. Just me? For the most part, Maison Papier didn't do too badly. Tainomi did well enough. She had great posture, but she needed to throw more confidence into her strut. And Ilona spent most of her time fangirling over Miss Stacey. Well, who wouldn't? And then there was Jimbo, bless. That walk is a choice, even after Stacey refined it. Hey, I had money down that it couldn't be done. I'll e-transfer you. Up next was Team Prilamoa, who had changed their name to House of Rust. And Priyanka went first, which I thought was very brave of her because she admitted Stacey McKenzie scares her. Oh, really? We hadn't noticed. Thank God Stacey was able to loosen Priyanka up a bit. As for Boa, a tweak here and a tweak there, and she seemed to have her gliding across the runway as well. As for Lemon, there seemed to be nothing that Stacey could teach her. She was feeling her fantasy, is what I'm saying. Team Rekiabo strutted out next and immediately announced that they had changed their name to Maison Boraga, which I have to admit is a little bit better than what I came up with, but only just. Rita Baga went first, and once Stacey got her to slow down her walk and think about something that made her feel good, Rita looked fierce. By the way, Rita was thinking about hot dogs. Ooh, hot dogs. Both Scarlett and Kiara seemed to have their walks down, mostly, but a tweak here and a improvement there from Stacey had her smiling from ear to ear. God, Stacey's good. And then it was elimination day, and the models strutted into the workroom. Well, at least Jimbo's fly was up. As for the rest of the queens, they were starting to feel the pressure. They all agreed that the first week's challenge was way easier because they actually got to use fabric. Clearly, some of these materials were giving these queens a run for the money. Well, everyone except Maison Papier. That must be why Rita Baga shaving her head was such a welcome distraction with all the queens. Well, that or they just enjoyed seeing themselves in the reflection. But enough about Rita's head, because there have been complaints. It was back to creating couture, and Scarlett Bobo seemed to be feeling a little better, especially after she looked around the room and saw that her team, Maison Boraga, seemed to have the most collection-like look of everyone in the room. Stuck on that, Tainomi and Ilona, is what I'm sure she would have said if the cameras weren't rolling. As the queens were getting ready, Ilona Verily shared with Tainomi Banks what it was like to be the only gay in her high school. Anyone else surprised that she liked the attention? Just me? Scarlett told Rita about her House of Bobo and their roots in Ottawa, and how important her drag mom, Jeanette Bobo, was to her, and how sadly Jeanette Bobo had passed away just before Scarlett got on the show. So, as you can imagine, got a little emotional for our Scarlett, just saying. And then it was time to hit the runway with this week's guest host, fashion designer Bedell, who I want to note is the first host of Canada's Drag Race to have a runway reveal. And thank God he did too, eh? Sweet beats, because that boiler suit off the top wasn't doing it for me, I'm just saying. First up from Maison Boraga, Scarlett Bobo. And can I just say, I absolutely love the top half of Scarlett's outfit. The shoulders, the headpiece, because you know I'm a whore for a little headpiece, and the makeup. Oh my God. I hope to God that Scarlett Bobo does a makeup tutorial when this is all said and done. I'm so serious. As for the rest of her look, well, it was just too simple. I didn't like the B on the front. The fact that it didn't close down one side distracted me, and the skirt just seemed like an afterthought. But the top half, art, I tell you, art! Speaking of faces, Kiara's another one who needs to do makeup tutorials. I'm so serious. This look was spectacular. Was I a fan of her dress? Well, not really. It was really too crafty. I didn't like the silver triangles down the front, but the fascinator, the collar, her face, the orange paint on her arms to resemble gloves. These were the stars of Kiara's show. And I, for one, was glad I had a ticket to it. Seriously. Last, but certainly not least, was the mother of Maison Boraga, Rita Baga herself. And I just have to say, hers was the only look from this collection that I loved from head to toe. But, as with the other two, the stars of it were the shoulders and the face. And that's what made their whole look a collection. I'm just saying. Next, from the House of Rust, was Boa. And I have to say, I didn't hate this look, but it was pretty simple, even after she opened her colanders. Sounds dirty. Let's just hope that silver diaper wasn't. Just saying. Personally, I hated Priyanka's dress. It didn't fit her, and the only thing keeping it closed seemed to be her hands. But she looked gorgeous. This was a stunning hair and makeup combo on Priyanka. I didn't even mind the umbrella sticking out of her head. Well, too much. Not only were umbrellas key to the look of House of Rust, but so were share wigs, which Lemon looked great in. Something else she looked great in was her copper pot scrubber dress. It was gorgeous. She even had spray painted her umbrella copper. Now that's attention to detail, seriously. Last but not least was Maison Papier, and up first, Ilona Verily. And I'm going to say I did not hate this dress. Did it look costumey? Yes. Did it look like a piñata? Sure. But the finishing was exquisite, and I thought she looked good in it, I'm just saying. Tainomi looked regal in her couture, although it wasn't as embellished as Ilona's. But I have to say, I couldn't decide which one I liked the most, because Tainomi's looked like a costume from a movie, whereas Ilona's looked like a costume for a kid's party. I was hoping that Jimbo's costume would tie all the looks together. I was wrong. I was not a fan of Jimbo's look. The spikes in the middle took away her waist. The pink and yellow puffballs made the whole thing look heavy. And that white makeup and hair was just frightening. There, I said it. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. First off, the winning house was announced. It was Maison Boraga, and the winning queen was Rita Baga herself. So, with that all said, those three queens frigged off to the Untucked Lounge. As for the rest of the queens, even though Bedell said he thought metal was the hardest material of all three to work with, he wished that Boa had done a high-low skirt instead of silver diapers for her look. Well, who didn't? Stacy and Brooklyn loved Priyanka's look, but I think that was because she had a killer runway walk. Just saying. Lemon was another hit with the judges, especially after she showed them her panties. Well, that's how I win contests. But all in all, the only thing the judges had to say about the House of Rust was that they wished there had been a little more cohesion with their collection. As for Maison Papier, they had cohesion, but there wasn't enough avant-garde elements in their couture, especially where Ilona and Tainomi were concerned. A fact that seemed to ruffle Tainomi's pom-poms. Just saying. I'm glad that Brooklyn took a moment to remind Tainomi who she was while she was apparently having that emotional breakdown on stage. I really think that it was great for her to take that moment to remind her what the other queens must have been feeling the minute she walked into that workroom. And keep in mind, Tainomi Banks has a great reputation in Canada. Just doesn't seem to do that well in competitions. I'm so serious. I'm also glad that Brooklyn Heights chastised Ilona and Tainomi for being polite Canadians and changing their design to suit Jimbo's grand scheme. Wusses. Not that Jimbo got out unscathed. The judges liked her outfit and her attention to detail, but not her makeup, or lack thereof, on her arms. Jimbo's excuse was that she ran out of time. Funny that no one had asked. And then all the queens untucked, and it became very obvious very fast that a good time had not been had by all. Ilona had a whole Aja moment where she went off on a tangent about not wanting to hear from Jimbo about how cold it was in a room because she just stood in front of the judges and all but been told that she was going home. Who else loved Jimbo just a little bit more when she clapped back at Ilona by saying, well, it's a good thing that all anyone here wants to do is listen to you. Just me? One queen who was really going through it was poor Tainomi Banks, and even with the support of the other queens in the room, she just could not stop being disappointed in herself for landing in the bottom for a third time in a row. Let this be a lesson to all you queens. We do live in a world where Boa can beat us in a challenge. Seriously. And then Ilona made it all about herself again, and there was great rejoicing. Apparently, Ilona's the only one who spent a red cent on any of her outfits for Canada's Drag Race. And now she's been reduced to representing dumpster divers. And as insulting as that statement was, it did seem to provide the queens with a much-needed laugh. Back on the runway, everyone was safe except for Tainomi and Ilona. And I have to admit, I was pretty sure that Tynomi Banks would be the one to have a nervous breakdown at this point, but no! It was Ilona Verily. Apparently she couldn't lip sync against her friend, but I think it was more that she was afraid to lip sync against Tynomi Banks. I'm so serious. But always the professional Tynomi, with the help of the judges, talked Ilona down and got her to a happy place. And then it was time to lip sync for their lives, and although the queens did okay, I was expecting way more energy from them for Avril Lavigne's girlfriend is all I'm saying. Seriously. Despite whatever was going through her before the lip sync, Ilona brought it. She actually did okay. She was engaging. She knew all the words. Well, of course she knew all the words. She's a Canadian drag queen. Seriously. Tynomi, on the other hand, was okay. She was poised. She seemed to know all the words, but there was still a reticence in her performance. And she seemed to get upstaged by Ilona. Or Ilona was just standing in front of her. Either way, when the pom-pom settled, it was no surprise to me, although it was to her, that Ilona Verily was safe, and that it was the third time to the bottom that saw Tynomi Banks sashay away, much to the surprise of everyone else. I'm so serious. So, there you go. Another queen down. Are you surprised that Tynomi Banks went home, or are you glad that she's out of the way and we can finally see some of these other queens sparkle and shine? Either way, do we think Ilona's next? I mean, she doesn't seem to be winning friends with all her whining, but at the same time, if she's got a challenge ahead of her where she can show off this wardrobe she's paid so much money for, maybe she could last another week. Who knows? All we can do is tune in to Canada's Drag Race next week to see how it all goes down. And then when you're done, you come on back and you see me so you and I can compare notes. Now, please don't forget to like this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We're over 5,000 subscribers. I'm so thrilled. Thank you all so much. And if you'd like to support this channel, the links to do so are in the description box down below. Until next week, miss me! Mwah! Seriously, Jorge, I like this depth charge. Better not be light beer.